What if the people you think are running from you are actually running from themselves? What if the silence that feels like rejection is not rejection at all, but love in disguise? And what if the avoidant, the one who seems cold, distant, unreachable, actually feels more deeply than anyone else in the room? Most of us believe love is proven in words, in constant communication, in reassurance, in open displays of affection. But what if that's only one language of love, and there's another hidden one? See, avoidants don't always say what they feel. They don't always show up in ways you expect. Their silence can hurt, their distance can confuse you, and their walls can make you believe they don't care. But here's the truth: those walls aren't built to keep you out. They're built to protect a heart that feels everything 10 times more than the average person. Imagine this: beneath the silence, they're loving you stronger than their words will ever confess. Beneath the withdrawal, they're battling an inner war of fear and desire. They're not running from you. They're terrified of losing themselves in you. That silence, it's not emptiness, it's intensity. It's a depth of feeling that words can't carry. So let me ask you, what if you stopped judging the silence as absence and started seeing it as presence? What if, instead of chasing louder words, you could recognize the power of quiet devotion? Because sometimes the loudest love is the love that never needs to be spoken. Silence is one of the most misunderstood expressions of human behavior. We live in a world where words dominate, where people are trained to equate love with text messages, constant reassurance, and verbal affirmations. But silence doesn't always mean nothing. In fact, for avoidants, silence can mean everything. Their quiet isn't the absence of love, it's the overwhelming presence of it. You see, when an avoidant feels deeply, they don't always know how to express it in a way that feels safe. They've been wired to believe that emotions are dangerous, that vulnerability is a trap, that saying too much gives someone power to hurt them. So what do? They go quiet, they step back, they retreat, not because there's no love in their heart, but because there's so much love that it terrifies them. Think about this: when your emotions are manageable, you can talk about them easily. When you feel mildly happy, you'll smile. When you feel a bit affectionate, you'll say, "I love you." But when you feel an emotion that is so strong it shakes your core, words start to fail. It's like trying to capture a hurricane inside a jar. It's impossible. That's what happens inside the avoidant's mind. Their silence is not a lack of caring, it's their system being overloaded with emotions too powerful to put into words. What most people misinterpret as distance is actually intensity. Silence is their pause. It's their processing. It's their nervous system scrambling to regulate an ocean of feelings that would drown them if they let it all spill out at once. For someone with an avoidant pattern, silence isn't about rejecting you, it's about protecting themselves from feeling consumed. Yet, ironically, it's that very silence that shows just how deeply they feel. If they didn't care, they wouldn't need to withdraw. If they weren't affected, they wouldn't need to regulate. Their quiet moments are proof of just how strongly your presence moves them. So, instead of interpreting the silence as, "they don't love me," start recognizing it as, "they love me so much, they're overwhelmed." It's a radical shift in perspective, but it changes everything. When you see silence not as absence but as overwhelmed presence, you stop chasing for words and start understanding the deeper language they're speaking. Because sometimes the most profound love stories aren't told through endless declarations. They're lived in the quiet moments when one heart feels too much to even speak. Love in the world of an avoidant is not about performance, it's about protection. To most people, love is measured in the big gestures, the romantic trips, the constant reassurance, the flood of words that say, "You mean everything to me." But for someone who carries avoidant tendencies, love isn't always about making it loud or obvious. It's about creating safety, both for themselves and for the person they care about. They don't love in fireworks. They love in shields. They don't always say, "I love you," 10 times a day, but they will quietly make sure you're safe, that your needs are met, that you are protected in ways you may not even notice at first. For avoidants, showing love through performance feels dangerous. Performance requires vulnerability, putting themselves on stage, opening themselves to judgment or rejection. But protection, that feels safe. It allows them to express love without stepping fully into exposure. They might not flood you with words, but they'll drive across town to fix your car when it breaks down. They may not write you long love letters, but they'll quietly pay attention to your smallest preferences and show up with your favorite snack after a hard day. Their love hides in these details, not because they want to keep it secret, but because these quiet gestures feel safer than loud declarations. Here's the truth: when an avoidant loves you, they are often fighting battles within themselves. One part of them wants to run and protect their independence, and another part aches to stay and pour into you. When they choose to stay, even silently, it's not casual, it's monumental. Their love is not about how much they can say, it's about how much they can risk by staying close. Every protective gesture, every small act of care is their way of saying, I may not say this out loud, but I'm here and I want you safe. That is their version of intimacy. The danger is when we overlook these acts of protection because they don't match our definition of performance. We miss the point. We keep asking for louder, bigger signs while ignoring the fact that the avoidant has already given us something deeply precious: their presence and their protective care. When you reframe their love as protection instead of performance, you stop doubting their feelings just because they don't echo yours. You start seeing the subtle ways they invest, the quiet ways they stand guard, the ways they let their guard down just enough to let you in. That's their love story, not one that's sung from the rooftops, but one that's built like a fortress around you. Their distance often feels like a dagger to the heart, but the truth is, it isn't rejection, it's fear. When an avoidant steps back, most people assume it's because they don't care, because they've lost interest, or because they're cold and unfeeling. But if you could step into their inner world, you'd see something entirely different. You'd see someone whose emotions run so deep they frighten themselves. You'd see someone who craves connection but has been conditioned to believe that intimacy is dangerous. Their distance is not a wall against you. It's a shield against their own terror of being consumed or abandoned. Imagine growing up believing that closeness always led to pain. Imagine learning through experience that the moment you depended on someone, that person either left, betrayed, or suffocated you. That becomes the blueprint. So when an avoidant starts to feel too much, their instinct is to retreat, not because they don't want you, but because the intensity of wanting you is almost unbearable. Distance, to them, is survival. It's a way to control the storm raging inside. When you see them withdraw, it's easy to take it personally. It's easy to think, they don't value me, they don't love me, they're rejecting me. But more often than not, the opposite is true. The deeper their feelings grow, the scarier it becomes for them to stay close. Every step they take back is an attempt to manage the tidal wave of emotion that threatens to crash over them. Their heart is screaming, don't leave me. But their fear is whispering, don't get too close or you'll lose yourself. That internal war is what creates the push-pull dynamic that confuses so many people. The paradox of avoidant love is that their distance often measures the depth of their feelings. If they didn't care, there would be no need to run. If you meant nothing, there would be no threat. But the stronger their attachment, the greater their fear of being engulfed, hurt, or abandoned. Their distance, painful as it may be, is often the clearest signal that you've touched something real inside them. So the key is perspective. Instead of interpreting distance as rejection, begin to see it as a signal of inner conflict. It's not about you being unworthy. It's about them battling with old wounds that tell them closeness equals danger. Their withdrawal isn't the end of love. It's the evidence of how powerful that love truly is. And when you can understand that, you stop chasing after words of reassurance and start honoring the silent truth their fear is proof of their feelings. Avoidants don't place their trust in promises. They place it in time. Words, no matter how beautiful, can feel empty to them because they've learned how easily words can be broken. Someone can say, I'll never leave you, and walk away the next week. Someone can say, you mean everything to me, but betray them when it matters most. For an avoidant, words are fragile, fleeting, and unreliable. But time, that's the one thing that cannot lie. Time reveals truth. Time exposes consistency. And for the avoidant, time is the ultimate test of love. This is why avoidants don't fall for declarations. They watch, they observe, they pay attention not to what you say, but to how you show up over the weeks, the months, the years. They need to see if you are steady when things get uncomfortable. They need to know if you're still standing there when the shine of romance fades and real life begins. For them, promises are only as strong as the actions that follow them, and actions are only proven by the weight of time. When you're in a relationship with an avoidant, this can feel frustrating. You may want fast reassurance, quick affirmations, and immediate commitment, but their love doesn't work like that. Their trust is not a door that opens easily with words. It's a fortress that slowly, carefully unlocks with consistency. Every time you show up when they expect you to disappear, a brick comes down. Every time you stay grounded when they push away, another brick loosens. And over time, the walls they built so carefully begin to soften. It's important to understand that this isn't stubbornness, it's protection. They've been hurt before. They've watched people say one thing and do another. They've seen how easily words can be used to manipulate. So they protect their heart by making time the judge. If you're still there after the storms, after the silences, after the moments where they retreat and test the distance, then slowly they begin to believe. Not in your words, but in your presence. The paradox here is that the avoidant doesn't need grand speeches. They need proof. And proof doesn't arrive in a single moment. It accumulates. It's in the small, steady decisions to stay. It's in the quiet reliability that speaks louder than any "I love you." The avoidant heart measures love not in declarations but in endurance. If you can withstand the tests of time, you'll discover that their trust, once earned, is unshakable. Because when an avoidant finally chooses to believe in you, it's not because of what you said, it's because of what you consistently proved. An avoidant may not always tell you how they feel, but their heart speaks loudly through actions. To many people, love is expressed through verbal affirmation, through "I love you," through constant reassurance, through open expressions that can be seen and heard. But for someone with avoidant tendencies, words feel vulnerable, even dangerous. Words make them feel exposed, and exposure means risk. Instead, they channel their love into small, deliberate actions that often go unnoticed unless you're paying attention. Their love doesn't always come wrapped in grand speeches. It comes in 1,000 little moments where they choose you without saying a word. You'll notice it when they remember something you mentioned in passing and act on it. Maybe you once told them your favorite snack, and weeks later, after a long and exhausting day, they place it quietly in front of you without fanfare. They won't make a big deal of it, but that act says more than words ever could. I was listening. I cared enough to remember. I cared enough to show up. You'll feel it when they fix the broken thing in your home without being asked, or when they take the time to handle a problem you were struggling with, not because they said they would, but because they wanted to make your world lighter. That's their version of "I love you." For avoidance, actions are safer than words because actions can't betray them the way words have in the past. Actions don't feel like a performance. Actions feel real, grounded, unshakable. They know that words can change with emotions, but when they act, it's proof of their care. Even if they struggle to open up verbally, their heart reveals itself in consistency, in showing up in moments that matter most. When they drive you home safely, when they check to see if you ate, when they stand beside you in silence just so you don't feel alone. These are the ways they pour out their love. It's easy to miss this language if you're expecting verbal confessions. You might think they never say what they feel. They never reassure me. But if you look closely, their entire love story is written in what they do. It's there in their presence when they could have walked away. It's there in the way they choose to help rather than speak. It's there in their loyalty when they don't make promises but simply keep showing up. The truth is, the avoidant heart doesn't love less, it simply loves differently. Their actions are their confessions, their silent gestures are their devotion, and their consistent presence is their vow. If you learn to hear their love in deeds rather than words, you'll realize they've been speaking to you all along, just in a language quieter but far more powerful than speech. Patience is the key that slowly unlocks the walls of an avoidant's heart. The instinct for many people in relationships is to push when they feel distance. They chase. They demand answers. They ask for more reassurance, more words, more signs of love. But with an avoidant, this approach backfires. The more you push, the higher their walls grow. The more you demand, the deeper they retreat. What they need is not force, it's time. What they respond to is not pressure, it's presence. Patience is the one thing that tells them, you are safe here. I won't break you open. I'll wait for you to feel ready. Imagine someone who has spent their entire life believing that closeness equals danger. Every relationship, every experience taught them to protect themselves, to hold back, to never fully lean in. Now imagine that person meeting someone who doesn't rush them, who doesn't try to rip down their walls, but who instead simply stays. That patience becomes healing. It becomes evidence that intimacy doesn't always have to hurt. Slowly, brick by brick, their defenses soften, not because someone forced them, but because someone gave them the space to trust at their own pace. Patience doesn't mean passivity. It doesn't mean tolerating disrespect or accepting emotional starvation. It means holding steady when their fears flare up. It means resisting the urge to panic when they withdraw. It means letting them process without interpreting their space as rejection. Over time, this steady energy communicates what words never could. I am not here to trap you. I am not here to take your freedom. I am here because I choose you, and I'll let you come closer when you're ready. That message, spoken not in words, but in consistent patience, can pierce through walls that once seemed unbreakable. Patience is powerful because it speaks directly to their deepest wound. Their fear has always been that someone will demand too much, take too much, suffocate them, or abandon them when they can't meet expectations. When you respond differently, when you allow them to move at their pace without punishment, you rewire their experience of love. They begin to see that closeness doesn't have to mean control. They begin to believe that connection doesn't always lead to betrayal. And little by little, they risk letting more of themselves out into the open. What patience does is build a bridge between your worlds. It creates a safe path for them to cross without fear of being rushed or pushed. And once they cross, once they finally let their guard down, the love they reveal is raw, powerful, and unshakable, precisely because it took so much time to trust you with it. Patience doesn't just unlock their walls, it shows them that love, real love, can feel safe. The strongest love is often the quietest, and nowhere is this more true than in the heart of an avoidant. We've been conditioned to believe that love is proven by big, loud gestures, public declarations, constant messages, endless reassurance. But real love, deep love, doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it sits silently in the corner of a room, steady, calm, unmovable. And sometimes it's found in the quiet presence of someone who doesn't always have the words but refuses to let go. That kind of love may not dazzle the world, but it carries a gravity that is impossible to fake. Avoidants often express love in this quiet way because silence feels safe. They know how words can fail, how promises can be broken, how declarations can be made in passion and then discarded. They don't always trust the loudness of love, but they do trust the weight of it, the kind that lingers even when it isn't spoken. Their love shows itself in subtle ways that don't demand recognition. It might be the way they remember your routines, the way they sit beside you without distraction, the way they stay even when everything in them is screaming to run. It's quiet, but it's powerful, and it's real. There's a certain strength in love that doesn't need validation. It doesn't beg to be noticed. It doesn't seek applause. It simply exists, steady and unshakable. That's why the avoidants love, when they allow themselves to give it, often lasts. It isn't based on performance. It isn't based on putting on a show. It's built on something deeper: commitment, loyalty, presence. Their silence may frustrate you, but that silence is also a sign that they feel something too strong to cheapen with empty words. The mistake most people make is assuming that quiet love is weak or incomplete. In truth, quiet love is often the strongest form because it has nothing to prove. It doesn't need to broadcast itself to feel real. It simply lives in the day-to-day choices to show up, to stay, to care. That is what makes it resilient. That is what makes it profound. If you can shift your perspective, if you can learn to recognize the quiet strength of their love, you'll begin to see what others miss. You'll see how much effort it takes for them to remain when every instinct tells them to retreat. You'll see how deeply they must care to keep choosing you in silence. Their love may not roar like a firework, but it will endure like the steady flame of a candle, quiet, unwavering, and impossible to extinguish. That's the kind of love that doesn't fade. That's the kind of love that lasts. When we look at avoidance on the surface, it's easy to misinterpret them. The silence, the distance, the hesitation, it all looks like indifference. But the truth is far more profound. What appears as detachment is often a shield for emotions that run deeper than they can manage. Their quiet is not absence, it is presence so overwhelming it can't be spoken. Their distance is not rejection, it is fear born from wounds that have taught them closeness can hurt. And their silence is not coldness, it is love in its rawest, most unpolished form. Throughout this journey, we've uncovered the secret layers of avoidant love. We've seen how their silence is not empty, but a sign of emotions too big for words. We've learned that their love shows itself not in performance, but in protection. We've realized their distance isn't a lack of caring, but the presence of fear colliding with desire. They don't test you with promises, they test you with time. They don't speak in speeches, they speak in actions. And they don't yield to pressure, but they respond to patience. Above all, we've discovered that their quiet love is often the strongest love of all. This understanding forces us to challenge our assumptions about what love should look like. Too often, we chase the visible, the declarations, the constant affirmations, the loud performances. But the avoidant shows us that love doesn't always wear a spotlight. Sometimes it hides in shadows. Sometimes it lives in gestures so small you could miss them if you're not paying attention. Yet those subtle gestures, that quiet presence, can be worth more than the loudest speeches. Love doesn't need to scream when it is steady. Love doesn't need to perform when it is real. The lesson is not to excuse unhealthy patterns or to settle for neglect, but to expand our vision of love. To recognize that people love in different ways, and sometimes the deepest devotion is the one that struggles to be spoken. It means learning to see the heart beneath the walls, to understand that fear and love often exist side by side. It means honoring the bravery it takes for someone who has been conditioned to hide to still choose to stay. That choice, made silently, is not weakness. It is strength. It is evidence of a heart that, despite fear, still dares to love. So the next time you feel discouraged by silence, pause. Instead of rushing to fill the gap with words, listen. Look closer. Pay attention to what they do, to how they show up, to the quiet ways they choose you. See their silence not as rejection, but as testimony. Witness their distance not as abandonment, but as the space they need to wrestle with feelings too strong to contain. When you shift your perspective, you stop chasing a version of love that looks like everyone else's and start experiencing the depth of love that is uniquely theirs. And that is the heart of this message. Avoidants may not love loudly, but they love deeply. Their silence may confuse you, but it is also their language. Their distance may hurt you, but it is also their proof of how much you matter. Their walls may frustrate you, but within those walls lies a heart that loves harder than words can ever express. If you can learn to recognize it, if you can meet it with patience and presence, you will discover a kind of love that is not fragile, not shallow, not fleeting, but enduring, powerful, and unbreakable. The strongest love is not always the one you hear. Sometimes it's the one you feel pulsing quietly, steadily, from a heart that speaks louder in silence than it ever could in words. Thank you for spending your time with me today. If this message touched your heart, I invite you to reflect on it, share it with someone who might need it, and carry its strength into your own journey. Remember, growth is a process, and every step you take, no matter how small, matters. I appreciate you for being here, for listening, and for choosing to invest in yourself. Until next time, stay strong, stay patient, and never forget, you are worthy of the love you seek. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.